We have just introduced the new members of the executive team. Mr. Fukushi here in the new cabinet of ours. He is the CDO, Chief Digital Officer, also concurrently serving as a deputy president. So that's another role of him. Mr. Tochio is still heading the corporate affairs. Kurashima is the head of the food division. But as you may know, some of you here have met him in Thailand. So previously, he was the head of the ASEAN division. And Mr. Bampas, he is our new head of our amino science division. And he previously was the deputy of the European business. And previously, he was responsible for PCM general manager. And currently, he is heading the amino science division. And the new CEO, Mr. Nakano here. And he will be supported by Mr. Mizutani, the head of the finance team. So with these members, we would like to go through the presentation. So please bear with us until the end. Thank you. Now, I would like to spend some time to make a presentation on the forecast for fiscal 2019 ending March 2020 and the outlook for the future. Please turn over to the next page. Next page, please. Next, please. As for our results for the interim period, the first half, as you may know already, so I would like to talk about the full-year projections towards the second half. So I would just like to talk about the details of the financial results. First of all, we have made a revision to the full-year guidance. The things that were not really good about Ajinomoto and the structural reform that we are planning to tackle going forward, we actually try to bring forward these structural reforms, and these efforts are starting to deliver results to some extent. So we are having mixed results of these efforts, and that's reflected in the results. So all of you here may find it difficult to understand, even more than usual. And we are so sorry for this not really easy to understand context, but I'll try to explain them. As you know, this is the interim results, and I think you are already familiar with the results. There are some ups and downs relating to sales performance. For business profit, as you know, because of the animal nutrition business and the environment surrounding that business, and also the currency impact, and the asset light and the Hong Kong Aomori impact is not included. So therefore, we have recorded a decrease in sales. Unfortunately, there were things that we are not really able to predict in the beginning. The Probascidor African joint venture impairment losses kicked in here, and also to some extent in the animal nutrition business, the African swine fever extended beyond our imagination. So this was actually something beyond our expectation. The impact was larger than what we had predicted. So that was the bad side, the negative side of Ajinomoto. For the full year, on the contrary, it may look that the performance in the second half is much worse compared to the first half. But this animal nutrition business is likely to deteriorate going forward rather than turning around. So that is factored in here. So we are expecting a decline in sales. And of course, the decline in profit still contains some significant amount of risk. And that's the reason why we had predicted this number. And another thing which will have a negative impact on sales is the full-year currency impact, which we are currently estimating at 107 yen towards $1. So this strong yen is likely to continue. So the negative impact from the currency translation is likely to expand compared to this first half of the year. And I'm sorry going back and forth, but for the profit, in addition to the animal nutrition business deteriorating due to the expanded impact of the swine fever, and also the the business, the umami seasoning for processed food was outperforming our expectation. It was too good in the first half. And in the second half, we believe the demand supply situation for the nucleotides will moderate, and therefore some sales volume will start to level off in this regard. So that's the reason why we had made a conservative outlook here. And for these reasons, we have made this estimate for the full year. In addition, in the first half, as we mentioned at the beginning of the year in May, as part of our structural reform, we are estimating to have 2 billion yen of company-wide shared expenses, which was not the case in the first half, but as planned, we are going to incur these costs in the second half. And these shared expenses are factored in the plan here in the second half. So for 48 billion yen in the first half, and the second half business profit is estimated to be 40 billion yen. And therefore, the revised forecast for fiscal 2019, as you see here, on a business profit basis is 88 billion yen, as you can see here. Now, next page. This is the results by segment for the first half of the year, and this is already factored in our results announcement in the financial statements, but I would like to highlight some of the points. As for the Japan food product, there's a decline of 0.7 billion yen. This is due mainly to coffee. Due to the cold summer, the liquid coffee products was sluggish in sales. And for that matter, I think we have already shared information with you. And AGF, they are producing stick coffee, regular coffee, instant coffee, and they are making shift to the premium products in these categories. So the single type liquid coffee that we had last year is no longer sold in the market, and we are actually shrinking. And that's therefore, this is a natural outcome of that. Bakery came all of a sudden, so maybe you may not be familiar with this, but in the Japan food products, in the processed food, this is included under the processed food. This is for industrial purpose and for major accounts. We are selling frozen bakery products, and this is a business that has been lasting for 25 years or so. And due to the competitive environment, the large accounts that we are supplying products with, the competition among them have become intense, and therefore we cannot expect a similar amount of profits going forward from this business, and therefore this is likely to result in impairment losses, and that has accounted for this some portion of the decline in sales. For other businesses, the seasoning for home and also for processed food, those were favorable, and for frozen foods and also instant coffee, the coffee products, which were somewhat a concern last fiscal year. Of course, we haven't recovered completely, but the core products, we are now concentrating to the large pillars of revenues, and we are making steady progress in that effort. So compared to last year, we have been able to increase the amount of profit for those products. For international food products, we have a separate slide later in the presentation. But other than Vietnam, the seasonings as well as the processed food delivered so good results. What happened in Vietnam, I will come back to this topic later. In the local currency basis, it was comparable to last fiscal year, as you see here, and including the Vietnam factor. But if you look at the details, excluding Vietnam, the seasoning and the processed food was 104% versus last year, and the frozen food it was 100% on par with last fiscal year because the mixed results on individual items were mixed. And unfortunately, Promasidor, the African business, we had recorded a second impairment loss. But as I said earlier, though we are making a shift to these products that are generating sales, and we are recovering in these products, and therefore that contributed to a profit increase. Life support numbers are explained here. What is included is the raw material and the fuel cost. And I'll come back to this topic, but this has offset to some extent the losses in the animal nutrition business. For the healthcare, the performance is mixed. Some products are good, such as pharmaceuticals, and yeah, for the amino acid products for the pharmaceuticals, thanks to the structural reform, this is delivering good results. And the amino acid demand in this category is now enjoying a tailwind. So riding on this trend, we are now ready to offer value-added products. So the pharmaceutical amino acid is now driving a growth in both sales and revenues, sales and profit. The challenge is the direct marketing, functional nutrition products, supplements, if you will. This is one of the pillars, amino L. Unfortunately, this product, starting April this year, up until today, we have to disqualify as a nutrition supplement product because there are some issues relating to the health claim, and therefore that was instructed by the ministry. So that's the reason why we have posted a significant decrease in sales and profit, which has been a drag for this healthcare segment. But overall, the amino acid products for pharmaceutical was the driver behind the recovery and offsetting the negative impacts. And next, I would like to come to the external impact of the animal nutrition business. I hope that you'll take a look at this later. The production of hogs in China has come down by 60% due to the African swine fever impact. And this is the most important slide. So I would like to supplement some additional information verbally. So in the beginning of the year, 97 billion yen is the business profit that we anticipated in the beginning of the year. Compared against this, including the impairment and the overseas international seasoning and also processed food is coming down by 5 billion yen, 5.6 billion yen, including the impact of Vietnam. So the impairment losses plus the Vietnam factor, if you exclude them, by and large, we are landing with other businesses at the beginning of the year projection level. For the processed food, there was more over 3 billion yen incremental sales in the first half, but in the second half, we are not expecting a similar increase in the second half. So in totality, we are talking about 3 billion yen. I said that nucleotide is increasing in demand, but that's one factor. But this is due mainly to the cost reduction due to the resource-saving fermentation technology, and the raw material cost did not increase as much as expected, including the fuel cost. The fuel cost and raw material cost compared to the beginning of the year forecast, compared to fiscal 19, was expected to deteriorate by 3.6 billion yen, but in reality, it had a positive impact, will likely have a positive impact of 4.7 billion. So this is a 1.1 billion reduction compared to 2 years ago. So this benefit accounts for 80% of this number. So this 1.1 billion accounts for 80% of this incremental. And on the other hand, the animal nutrition here. This fiscal year, 2.3 billion business profit was the ambition this fiscal year, but delta is 7.7 billion negative impact. So this is included already in the 88 billion landing figure. And we just included the ups and downs for these three major businesses. So let me try to sort things out here. This fiscal year, 88 billion yen full-year forecast. This includes the Probashidor impairment losses of 3.9 billion yen. This is extraordinary losses. That's already included in the 88 billion yen. Set aside that, other than that, the structural reform related expenses in the second half of 2 billion yen are also factored in. And on a positive note, the impairment loss, a sizable impairment loss was done for the fixed asset in Europe for the animal nutrition business of 10 billion yen or so, and Probashidor impairment loss, and also the Japanese bakery 3.8 billion yen business, Japanese bakery business of 3.8 billion yen. On the other hand, the depreciation cost has a positive impact to some extent. So these elements will be incurred and recorded, and that's already factored in the revised forecast. And for the umami seasoning for the processed food, 3.4 billion yen in the first half. Actually, 3 billion yen out of that is due to the nucleotide and the raw material. If you think about these environments, the tailwind, the favorability is somewhat included in here. So in that regard, towards the next fiscal year, the short-term factors that was included in the forecast, some of these will have to be subtracted for the next fiscal year, which is the favorability of the umami seasonings. And something that will disappear next fiscal year would be the impairment factor, as well as the special expenses of 6 billion altogether. These factors is something you don't have to consider for next fiscal year. In addition, in 2020, towards fiscal 2020, the resource-saving fermentation technology that had a positive impact towards 2020, but beyond 2022, of course, we have to wait for some scrutiny. But the positive factor from this resource-saving fermentation of some low billions of yen can be expected, and the asset-light measures that will be implemented in the second half, plus the structural reform measures. With these measures, we can save some costs, which is estimated to be 2 billion yen or so for the full year next fiscal year. So that's something that we can enjoy next fiscal year. And therefore, of course, we have to think about the currency translation impact, and also we have to improve the accuracy of the forecast for the raw material cost and the fuel cost. But I think definitely the costs that were required for the cost and structural reform this year will have a positive impact from next fiscal year onwards.
Next slide. This is for the impairment loss in the first half. So we have already covered animal nutrition. As to Pramasido, why the second time for the impairment? If you have any questions, you can ask them in the Q&A. The biggest the trigger is the Algeria, the business environment getting the worse. The fiscal the situation of the country, depending on the oil, that is worsening, and the economic situation of the country is worsening. The goods are not selling very well, and our joint venture business, powder milk products, which is one of the business pillars, is faced with the tailwind because of the increasing the cost, and we are struggling to make recovery. But the current situation will continue, and based on that judgment, the second impairment. The bakery business, which was in the scope of asset light from the next year to reduce the asset of this business. But last year it was in the red, and the first half also in the red. So the first half, we impaired all the fixed cost, the assets. And 14.9 billion yen of the asset for the animal nutrition. That represents 75% of the fixed asset in Europe. So it was the big treatment. As to number 1 and number 3 businesses, please understand that is an accelerated asset light initiatives. Next page. So the other lines under the business profit, we have already covered impairment losses and others, 22.6 billion. And for the structural reform, 15 billion yen is included. And with that, profit pre-tax profit goes down this way. And as to income taxes, at the beginning it was 28.7% tax rate, but after revision, 35.7%. The Promasidol impairment, animal nutrition, part of its impairment are not treated as the non-taxable. Next page. This is the medium-term management plan progress. Unfortunately, we regret that for the fiscal year 19, 7.7% business profit, 3% for ROE, 6.2% ROA. But as to ROA, compared to the forecast at the beginning of the year, Japan foods and the international foods and healthcare businesses, so-called core businesses, ROA improved for all of these core businesses. But unfortunately, the impact coming from the animal nutrition, life sport, dragged the situation. So 6.5% ROA went down to 6.2%. Next page, the shareholder returns, as I mentioned earlier, it was a regrettable results. But as to cash in, operating cash in, under the current circumstances, as to profitable businesses, we are earning a cash profit. 120 billion yen or so, the cash in is achievable. So in line with the original forecast. So as to shareholders' return, dividend forecast remains at 16 yen, the 32 yen for the year. So without impairment, the total shareholder return, the 50.9%. So it is in line with the promised level. Now, some specific topics. In the international food products, seasonings is the core business. Some supplementary comments. As to umami seasonings, without Vietnamese factor, on the local currency basis, actually it was less than the previous year. But without Vietnamese inventory issue, the 106% year on year. So due to the price hike from the last year. As to flavor seasonings, 104% growth. This includes a Vietnamese business impact for the global market level, the growth. And we would like to exceed the market level. And that is the current, the big challenge. As to menu-specific seasonings, 11% growth rate on the local currency basis, in line with our expectation. Next, how we are going to increase international the seasonings business. The details will be in our midterm business plan. But as you know, our strength in this area is the development of products adapted to the locality, a #1 brand, and the delivery capabilities. So the traditional trade visits through that kind of approach to the usage of distributors, modern trade, CBS approach, such combination, the localized combination, that is our traditional way of doing business. In addition, we are trying to integrate some businesses as global strategy. The seasonings, umami, or flavor, or menu-specific the seasonings, because of the umami, the component, you can continue the low salt the diet, and that is discussed in the academic paper, and there is evidence for that. So from the next year on, global savory the business will be the integrated entity to work on that strategy. Umami and flavor seasonings, the large volume businesses will be increased through this strategy. As a topic, the good news is as follows. Last year, we conducted World Mummy Forum in New York. and that move is spreading out gradually in the market. For example, the large, the mass, the sales, the entities approaching us to work with us with the umami, the components to create more delicious the products. And so we're receiving many requests from those entities. And in Japan, after that forum, the no additives to the, in other words, the chemical the additives. That we have been engaged in very active discussions. In 2009, from the second half of 2009, 106% increase for the very first time for Ajinomoto. So now we hit the bottom and put ourselves on the recovery track. And so this strategy is already proving itself. We are confirming the effect of this strategy, so we would like to continue to work on that. Next page. It's growth strategy, important pillar, namely electronic materials business. New market information is to be provided here. First, logic IC product. This is the market forecast data. This is for the calculation, a very high functional IC for calculation. And this is the market forecast about the growth. And the bottom is the data server number forecast. This is based on the market, the information. And in 2017, being the start line for our electronic the businesses, and 1.7 times the growth by 2022. And this data is the evidence for us to achieve it. Next.
This is the pharmaceutical custom manufacturing strategy, and some data is provided here. What is distinctive about this is the position of the ADC, new technology, and also we have this AjiBioPharma services and the oligonucleotide. We have uniqueness in both Japan and Western markets, and also Fulbright. We have the low molecule business and trusted business. So US, Japan, and Europe. 3 locations are now operated as one team. And by doing so, we will be able to provide service and strengthen our services to the large pharmaceutical companies. And fiscal 2019, the commercial products are more than 55 in the pipeline, and in the drug development, more than 100 is in the pipeline. That's the target. And in the first half, we have progressed in line with this plan. As for the non-financial initiatives, by and large, all the goals for fiscal 2020 are progressing in line or even faster than the plan. So therefore, towards the next midterm management plan, the targets and strategy relating to the nutrition, the qualitative targets, as well as the solutions based on the materials, as well as the social value improvement. We would also like to redefine the quantitative targets again based on all these factors. And for environment, the biggest theme is climate change. And for that, based on the TCFD recommendation, scope 1 to 3, for those scopes, we are going to set the targets and initiatives as our action. Next page. This is the fiscal 2018 simulation that we have conducted in Thailand. If the temperature rises by 2 degrees, what are the impacts? This is the simulation that we have conducted, and that's illustrated in this chart or picture. For example, tapioca and other raw materials, if there is a temperature rise of 2 degrees, there won't be any direct impact on those raw materials. However, fuel costs as well as the carbon tax, if there are new regulations like carbon tax are implemented, there could be some potential risks. That's the result of the simulation. This Thai data was done for the umami seasonings and the major businesses risks in the Southeast Asia region. This can be applied to that region. However, this fiscal year, we are going to expand the scope of the simulation to a larger area than Southeast Asia. This simulation is currently in progress, so we would like to reflect that in the risks when we announce the midterm management plan. And also the countermeasures for those would also be announced during this medium-term management plan presentation. Next, this is also the roadmap towards the next medium-term management plan that we have announced in May. And this is the second important pillar of my topic today. I would like to talk about the asset-light measures, which has a size of 100 billion yen. I've already alluded to some of these initiatives earlier, and of course, this resulted in impairment. But of course, this will remove some of the fixed assets, but this will lead to better execution of asset-light measures. So I think because the fixed assets has come down in numbers. So I would like to talk about the details of asset-light measures afterwards. And last time I talked about, as we move ahead with the asset-light strategy, how are we going to achieve a 4% growth? So that was somewhat misleading. So I mentioned that the asset-light measures is going to be conducted through the period up to 2021. During that period, will be achieve a 1% growth. But then thereafter, leveraging the improved structure, we would like to achieve a 4% growth in the period after that, up to 2022 and beyond. And I would like to talk about the non-core business. Three non-core business were defined. One is the global frozen food, Mexican and Italian foods. We were going to apply an asset-like measure for these foods, and part of the processed seasoning for processed food will also be covered as well. And also part of the animal nutrition business will also be subject to the asset-light for non-core business. Given the current business environment, and I believe the situation will become more worse, and this is going to prolong, and therefore we would like to move ahead deeper in this approach. So for these, I would like to talk about the current situation just briefly, verbally here. The contraction and the contraction of the business asset is covering, for example, altogether 40 billion worth of assets company-wide. And the nutrition, animal nutrition, French business was impaired this time around, and 54% of this are likely to be covered this fiscal year. And the remainder will be conducted in the period between fiscal 20 and 2021. That is, so out of 100 billion yen, 40 billion yen applies to non-core asset-light measures. And the frozen food to be conducted from fiscal 2020. From fiscal 2020, maybe to some extent up to 2022, 4.5 billion yen worth of fixed assets will be contracted. We have global operations, but 4 plants are currently going to be reduced according to our current plan. And we will also seek further efficiency improvement. And when we announce the medium-term management plan in February, we would like to announce more details. And in August, the Fort Worth factory plant was announced to be closed. We are continuing the production there, but we are now making preparations for the transition of production. So in January next year, we will be closing this and start closing this and starting the transition thereafter.
So the umami seasonings for processed food manufacturers, the international business. So far, this blue part, the 70% or more than 70% was the target, and currently it is 72%. For this year, a little bit over 70%. And we are trying to increase it, which is the consumer ratio. The 30% of the external industrial part will be reduced. Next page. The animal nutrition business. The commodities will be even more thoroughly reviewed. 2020, the in-house the production target was 50%, but this 50% will be further reduced. we reduced production in Brazil and in Thailand. In May this year, we lowered the production. And the lysine production in Thailand is now being transferred to M3 plant. In addition, so we were planning to achieve a 50% in-house ratio, but for that number, we can even lower it. And as to specialties, the growth is slowing down. The minus 5.3 billion for this year, that the projection is shown here in this graph. Orange part, specialty, that is in the red as well. So the valine price is coming down as well in the specialty. So the Agiplo L and the amino acid plus value added products are now being drugged by that price hike. So the commodity specialty require the fundamental the review, the reduction in commodity and alliance for specialties. The 25 billion yen target here for business profit, this cannot be achieved. So for the next fiscal year, full year target, the animal nutrition negative impact will continue for the next year as well. So we need to strengthen our plan. Next page. Another part in the asset light, in other words, resource allocation. These are the themes which are currently running. So 40 billion yen for business reduction, business asset reduction. For the midterm plan, resource allocation 80 billion yen or so. The reflux from the group companies to pay down the debt or to sell policy shareholders or reorganization of functional subsidiaries or reconsideration about the joint venture, the stake ratio. As to 80 billion yen worth reduction, for fiscal year 2019, we are going to have some reflux from subsidiaries or sell some shares. These approaches that will be for 35%, and 65% of 80 billion yen that will be implemented in the coming 2 years. Next page. Yesterday, well, this is not about asset light, but corporate services and the improvement of efficiency of the services, the 2.5% for the plan, and the measures to achieve it. Shared service center collaboration with Accenture from April 1st next year, and we made that announcement yesterday. So the JV alone will not make it very efficient overnight. We need to review the features, and we have identified where we can make improvements. And using know-how and resources of Accenture from the fiscal year 2020, we would like to achieve these targets. The reduction in expenses will be about 2 billion yen for fiscal year 2020. Next page. Based on these factors, the 3-year plan from the next fiscal year, cash balance and the shareholder return and investment, the features here remain the same from those that we covered in May. That's all I have. Thank you very much.